Some breaking news. Welcome, everybody, to another exciting episode of Under the Dome. Seattle is evidently releasing
Yes.
Bobby Wagner.
That literally happened. Came across the screen as we were in our musical countdown to start the show.
Yeah.
Holy. They're in complete free fall mode, Dan.
They're in full rebuild. They've just decided with that, we're going to rebuild this roster. So, you know,
where's Wagner going? Or are they just releasing?
Just released.
He's just a free agent, yeah.
They Tyler Lockett, I saw, is available if you want to give the Seahawks some more draft picks. So yeah, they made a decision once they traded Russell Wilson that they're going to go into rebuild mode.
With a 70-year-old head coach, by the way.
Yeah, a 70-year-old head coach. I can't imagine. I thought they would have made these decisions much earlier. Yep. You know, it's funny. Washington's thinking, we gave you a lot more than what you got for what Denver gave you, what you got from Denver. But Seattle's attitude is, you know what? We don't have to see him anymore, but once every 4 years. Yep. So we'd rather him in the AFC. And you know what that division's like now? Just telling my dad this right before we got on the air. That division is now Justin Herbert, Derek Carr, who is now the worst quarterback in this division, Patrick Mahomes, and I said Justin Herbert already, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. And now Russell Wilson. So, that's your four. And I guarantee you Sunday Night Football, Monday Night Football are going to suddenly have a lot of AFC West matchups to get those shootouts.
Well, and it's not only the AFC West, but you look through the entire AFC conference. You got Joe Burrow. You got Lamar Jackson, if you believe he's a marquee quarterback. He isn't, but the national media will have you believe that. You have Allen, and then you have last year's top overall draft choice, Trevor Lawrence. This is very much this conference is very much starting to shape up like the AFC conference was through between the mid 80s and early 90s. John Elway, Jim Kelly, Dan Marino, Boomer Esiason, Bernie Kosar, Warren Moon. I mean, they were the best of the best, with one exception. Some guy named Joe Montana down in San Francisco was in the NFC.
That AFC West is starting to sound like the old NFC South.
A little. Yeah.
When you had Breeze, you had Ryan, you had Cam, and whoever played at Tampa at the time.
Tampa had nothing. Tampa had Josh Freeman. They had Jameis Winston. They had they had nothing. It's interesting you said that because I thought the same thing. It's like the 1983 draft all over again with Marino and Elway and all those quarterbacks, Ken O'Brien. But who was winning all the Super Bowls back then? It was the NFC.
Yeah,
because those teams were built around strong running games, defense. You look at the Redskins, the Giants, the Bears, you had the 49ers in there 3 times, but I mean, it was power football. They built defenses that were designed to beat the hell out of those quarterbacks in the AFC.
Yep. So, and look at who's won the last handful of NFC's won the last 2 Super Bowls, and I think 4 of the last 6. With much of the same kind of formula.
Chris Sims. I forget about Chris Sims. I really do.
Same as everybody else.
Yeah.
The only time I think about him is when I get mad at him because he says something stupid, which is just about every time that I see that he said something.
Yeah. I got him and Florio and Rappaport all blocked. Yeah, I've had enough.
I always say Schefter's getting pretty good. Schefter's pretty good at getting his stuff out, but my go-to guy is always Jay Glazer. Once Jay Glazer says it, it's going to happen. It's like Nick Underhill with Saints News. If Nick Underhill says something, it's going to
Bank on
Bob? What, Bob?
No.
No?
I
Really?
can't. No, I can't. No, in other news, there's been lots of quarterback.
Okay. All right. Okay. Well, we started the show talking about this. We can't avoid, because we're in the quarterback carousel year, and the Saints are all part of this now because we don't have Drew Brees anymore. We've got all these quarterbacks that they were rumored to move. Aaron Rodgers has signed a huge contract. $200 million to surpass the contract signed by Patrick Mahomes. So he's now the highest paid quarterback at 38 years old. I don't want to hear shit about Drew Brees being selfish anymore and getting overpaid either. But, he signed this contract. They still have Devontae Adams they've got to sign. Now they're starting to learn the Mickey Loomis tricks.
Yeah.
But you've got $200 million invested essentially, because I think 150 of it is guaranteed money.
I believe so.
Yeah. So
it's insane for a 38-year-old man.
Exactly. I mean, how many more years are you going to get out of Aaron Rodgers at an elite level? And you only have where's the rest of your team going to come from? I mean, you invested a first-round pick in Jordan Love. There's a possibility if you're looking for a quarterback. Because Jordan Love is now going to be available for trade, because he's not going to wait till he's in his 30s to get a shot.
No,
because this is a 4-year deal. So I don't know what to say. What's your take, Bob, on Aaron Rodgers' contract?
Not surprising whatsoever. Aaron Rodgers got the two things that he wanted above all else: attention. There's three things: attention, money, and attention. I never believed for 1 millisecond he was going to leave Green Bay. I thought that if it was money that kept his mouth shut for a week, because that's all it'll take, that Green Bay would shell it out, and sure enough, it's certainly a record-breaking contract until the next guy gets paid. And like I said, Rodgers got his attention, but what made me laugh is he got his attention for about 3 hours today. Before a better quarterback made bigger news.
And that's where I'm going with this next, because we've been touching on it. Sean.
Yes, sir.
Aaron Rodgers 38, Russell Wilson's 33. Would you have given up what Denver gave up for Russell Wilson, given that you really aren't one player or a quarterback away from making a Super Bowl run?
I really don't think I would have.
You gave up.
Given that, and don't misunderstand me. I make no qualms whatsoever about the talent of a Russell Wilson, and he's a stand-up guy. He's a quality character guy, and he's a great team leader. But as you said, he's 33 years old, and you are not Russell Wilson away from making the Super Bowl.
Yeah, you gave up Drew Lock. Well, that's not giving up much. But you did give up a Shelby Harris, a Noah Fant, who are two good players for Denver. You gave up 2 first-rounders, so this year's first and next year's first. 2 second-rounders, so this year's second and next year's second, and a 5th-round pick. In exchange, you got Russell Wilson, a 4th-round pick. Now, Denver does have a good receiving core. Very good. They got Jerry Jeudy.
Yeah, but if they don't keep Russell Wilson upright, how's he going to take advantage of that?
Who's the running back too? You
got a solid running back. I forget the guy's name.
Is it still Melvin Gordon?
No,
No.
he's a free agent. It's Javonte Williams from North Carolina.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I had him on my fantasy team this year.
That's right.
So-
that was the guy you liked in the draft a lot last year too, if I remember right. Sean, I think you were the one that told me you liked him a lot. Somebody told me they liked Javonte Williams a lot out of North Carolina. But
Yes, me. That was me.
okay, all right, yeah. So
It took me a minute to remember.
Yeah, so
It's the name thing.
that's okay. So the question is, you're going to play in now. We said before the toughest division probably in football, next to probably the NFC West. How good can Denver be, Bob?
I'm rooting for him to play really well. I mean, this is the team that I loved watching. When I was a kid and they had John Elway.
Mm-hmm.
But Denver, as of their roster now, they still can't protect the passer, which that was Wilson's main problem allegedly with Seattle, was that they couldn't protect him.
That's where I was going with this, but go ahead.
Denver does have a fine receiving core on paper, but they've led the NFL in drops for the last 2 years. It's young, high drafted talent, but other than Tim Patrick, they've been largely unproven so far. They'll get their chance. They'll get their chance with an elite quarterback. Denver has a very good defense, but they gave away Von Miller last year via trade. Bradley Chubb, the other pass rushing linebacker, can't stay healthy, and you just traded away your best pass rusher outside of Vaughn and Chubb, to get Wilson in the first place. So Denver still has a whole lot of question marks, and they're going to be without first and second round draft choices the next 2 years, to try to fill that. It's going to be very interesting. You can't say Denver hasn't been aggressive. And I knew coming into the offseason that they were going to be aggressive going after a quarterback. Everybody thought it was going to be Rodgers, but there were some other names. Wilson was floated out there too. So I'm not shocked that they pulled the trigger on this deal. I am shocked for the amount that they gave up. And Saints fans that are tuning in. And by the way, hi everybody. Hi Who Dat Nation.
We just jumped right into it.
If you're only a follower of the New Orleans Saints, that's okay. But I'll give you a perspective of what Denver gave up to get Russell Wilson. That would have been like New Orleans giving up, trading Taysom Hill, Eric McCoy, Marcus Davenport, and their first and second round draft choices the next 2 years. One of those draft choices in Denver's case, by the way, being the number 9 overall pick in this draft, and a top 40 pick for that second round pick. So that's equivalent. That's the New Orleans Saints equivalent to what Denver just gave up. So, like Sean just said, in my opinion, I'm not denying Wilson's talent, and I would have loved to see him in New Orleans, but I wouldn't have given up Taysom Hill, Eric McCoy, Marcus Davenport, and first and second round draft choices the next 2 years. I just wouldn't have.
I don't think it balances out.
No.
Well, again, and you always make that. They make that same mistake. It's like Herschel Walker. You think if you think you're one player away from making a Super Bowl run, you're going to find out that you have a lot of the holes that have just opened up as soon as you plug that one big one. Okay, so Denver. Matt saying Denver has 2 seconds.
Okay.
That's fine. Where's the second one? I don't know. I don't know the exact draft order. And Von Miller is an aging player. I was critical of his performance with Los Angeles this past year. I thought he clearly lost a step.
I think the best purpose that Von Miller served, his reputation, granted Aaron Donald some freedom.
Yeah. But again, and you're playing now in an incredibly tough division with a rising Chargers team, if they can ever straighten out their head coaching problem, which that's, again, why I think if Peyton goes anywhere after he tries television, doesn't like it. I think he goes to Los Angeles and becomes the head coach of the Chargers, just because you've got a young, exciting quarterback in. Oh, that's true for Von Miller. Received a second and a third from the Rams both this year. Okay, so they had picks to burn, but yeah, we won't even talk about how the Rams have no first round pick for a few years still.
Until like 2040.
Yeah, and they have an aging roster. So anyway,
some of which are talking about not even playing anymore.
Yeah, so you play in a very competitive division with a lot of young, up-and-coming players. Even the Chiefs are still relatively young. They still have a lot of playmakers. If the Raiders can get their act together, I mean, they made the playoffs despite all that chaos last year. If they can ever get some consistency out there, they are a challenge. So, you know, you're talking about you probably going to want some of those high picks to restock around Wilson. And that's why I feel like they gave up way too much. But one of the things you said, Bob, and we'll pivot this to the Saints now. One of the things you said was that the price for Jimmy Garoppolo now has gone up because Wilson set the market. So one of the rumors is that the Saints are interested in Jimmy Garoppolo. My take has always been the Saints are interested in all the quarterbacks in the draft, all the quarterbacks in free agency, all the quarterbacks that might be available via trade. So, you know, them being linked to Garoppolo is not an a ridiculous thing to me. It's a very realistic idea because they're going to do their due diligence on everybody,
as they should.
So what do you think, Bob, and then I ask you a question, Sean, but what do you think, Bob, is the compensation, given that Garoppolo is coming off of shoulder surgery too, but given all of Garoppolo's accomplishments, what do you think the compensation is for him now?
Well, remember, the 49ers traded up to draft Trey Lance in the first round last year. So, San Francisco's negotiating position isn't the strongest in the world. But the reason that I believe that the Wilson deal drove up the asking price for Garoppolo is because it's a quarterback, or it's for a quarterback and one that has won in this league. Garoppolo has been to a Super Bowl. He's been to 2 or 3 NFC championships. He isn't the play. I'm not saying that the 49ers are going to be asking for the moon and Mars like what Seattle got for Wilson. But I believe now that Jimmy Garoppolo will end up being traded for potentially as high as a first-round pick, no worse than a second. Before today, and we saw that huge domino fall with Russell Wilson, I thought that Garoppolo could be had for maybe a third or a combination of a third and a fourth-round pick, which to me was still too much to trade. For Garoppolo, if you could sign Jameis Winston. But now, like I said, I truly believe that today Jimmy Garoppolo's price, his getting price, we'll call it, is ramped up at least a couple of notches, because you still have several teams that are desperate for a quarterback, New Orleans being one of them.
Okay. So yeah, Matt. I watched. Go ahead.
I just wanted to ask Bob. You're more knowledgeable on this than I am, obviously. You're a GM, or you're a coach, or you're part of the brain trust. You give up a first round for Garoppolo?
No, absolutely not.
Me either.
I would still push hard to re-sign Jameis Winston, and if that fails out, I might. I would probably offer the 49ers a third and a fourth, or a third and a conditional fourth, with the chances to move up depending on Garoppolo's performance. If that fails, then I shift my gears to the draft, and bringing in a stopgap, a bridge starter, which we'll get into in a few minutes. But yeah, that's where my mindset would be if I'm in the front office or on the sidelines of the New Orleans Saints.
I completely agree with that.
So, Sean, then my question for you is, Jimmy Garoppolo has brought you to a couple of NFC Championship games, has brought you to the Super Bowl. Your record with him as your starter is like 33-15 or something like that. Your record without him starting is like 8-27 since 2018. Why are you anxious to get rid of him, and why you're the 49ers? Why are you anxious to get rid of him, and why Trey Lance? Why don't you try and see if you can get something for Trey Lance and maybe try again with something else?
Well, that's the conundrum around this whole situation. You spend a first-round draft pick to get a quarterback. You don't do that unless you see him making a sizable contribution, no less than in year two. And you can't afford to pay Garoppolo to sit on the sidelines either.
No, you can't.
But as you alluded to, your quarterback from a year ago that everybody seems to assume that you're going to jump off of now and trade or get rid of or let walk or whatever, has taken you to 2 consecutive NFC Championship games. Has been to a Super Bowl and was within an eyelash of winning it. Was within an eyelash of going to this year's Super Bowl.
Yeah.
But I think the key part of what you just asked me comes with what you said about the record of the 49ers without him as a starter. That's a lot of games.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's like the situation whenever we talk about Terron Armstead. Great player when he's on the field. And you can't afford to pay through the nose for a player like that if you're only getting half service from him.
Yeah, and that's my sticking point with there's 2 things. I like Garoppolo, okay? I know I'm in the minority on this. I like him as a player. I like the way he plays. I think he's a good quarterback. He's not Drew Brees. He's not Tom Brady. He's not Aaron Rodgers even. He is in that second level, just below those kind of guys. He is a guy that is going to win you a lot of games. He will make boneheaded throws occasionally. He will do things that, separate him from the elite group. Okay. But he's injured a lot of games he misses. And it's things like thumb injury, foot injury, ankle injury. It's always these nagging injuries. I mean, you think people get aggravated with Davenport, they get aggravated with Pete, they get aggravated with Armstead. Throw Garoppolo in that mix. That's why he's not worth a first-round pick or a second-round pick or anything of that nature to me. Because
I completely agree with that.
I can't pay that compensation. I can't justify his injury history. And given what we just lived through this past year, the last thing we need is another injury-prone player. But he's a good player. So, a quarterback-needy team is probably going to roll the dice on him and say, look, we're going to take a shot that maybe it was a scheme in the 49ers that exposed him to a lot of hits. If we can protect him with a better offensive line, we'll shorten the passing game, have him get rid of the ball quicker, we probably, can use him and win with him because he is that good of a quarterback. So yeah, for me, it's a tough pill to swallow for that. If he was an unrestricted free agent right now, I would have no problem putting him on the radar as saying, "Go get that guy." You know,
and that's I put Garoppolo in the class that you close your eyes and you pick a name out of a hat, and I put Jameis Winston in that same group. Garoppolo, Winston, Derek Carr, Matthew Stafford, and I could list a handful more. The guys that you can win with, guys that can really look special in the right kind of scheme. Yet guys that will, at least up to this point in their careers, have more often than not made a boneheaded play or a boneheaded decision to keep them from elevating to the elite. So if all those guys are in the same category, then, going back to Jameis Winston, why would I give up compensation to get a Jimmy Garoppolo when I could just re-sign Jameis Winston, if indeed that's possible? But again, and this is another thing that's going to drive up the getting price to get Garoppolo. And no, Matt, he's not a top 5 NFC quarterback. He's close, but he's not a top 5. But anyway, New Orleans, Pittsburgh, Seattle now, potentially Minnesota, Washington, Tampa Bay. Those are 6 teams that are in desperation mode. Carolina. 7 teams that are in desperation mode for a quarterback right here and right now. There's going to be heavy competition and heavy negotiating to get a Jimmy Garoppolo, to get a Deshaun Watson if he gets cleared of his legal troubles, and to get a Jameis Winston off the free agent market.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
it's just like you alluded to, Alan. It's almost like the draft. Somebody is going to overpay to get a quarterback, just like they overdraft these quarterbacks coming out of college, thinking that they have a diamond in the rough.
They are in full rebuild mode. I agree with that. No, I wouldn't say Taysom's not a top 5 quarterback or a top 10 or anything. To me, this is going to piss off some people, but to me, he and Teddy Bridgewater are pretty comparable from the standpoint of they are marginal starters, but solid backups. Okay.
Yeah.
Teddy.
I think that's fair.
Teddy Bridgewater, I feel, is not a 16 game or 17 game now season starter. He's just not going to give you that kind of thing. And I don't think Taysom can play what he does during the game, come in for a few plays, do some stuff. If your starter gets hurt, he can play for 2 or 3 games, but the longer he's out there, the more his limitations show.
I would have been okay. I'm not going to say okay. I would have felt better about pursuing Garoppolo had Peyton not left.
That's funny because Peyton was a big fan of Garoppolo because they both went to Eastern Illinois, and I think if Peyton had his choice, if he would have stayed, he would have tried to get Jimmy Garoppolo, because he probably sees a lot of Tony Romo and a lot of Drew Brees in Jimmy Garoppolo, but he would structure his offense around the aging Drew Brees. It would be that kind of game, a more horizontal game as opposed to a vertical game, which is, I think, the other reason why Shanahan wants somebody different in there, because Shanahan wants more of a vertical attack, which is strange because his offense is really designed. When you think about Debo and Kittle and those kind of guys, it's much more of a horizontal attack. But that's just me looking at that team. I'm always happy when they screw up. And I think Shanahan's he's a good coach, but he's got a lot of McVay in him. Very arrogant and doesn't think about the repercussions. And I put a lot of the losses that Garoppolo gets blamed for on Shanahan calling those kind of plays.
Absolutely.
Really didn't.
Absolutely. Same way he was in Atlanta. He cost him the damn Super Bowl.
he doesn't need to call those kind of aggressive plays when you're moving the ball down the field. Be patient. Don't try and get it all in one play, and that's what he does. And he puts Garoppolo in those positions. That doesn't mean Garoppolo's made his own fair share of mistakes. Don't get me wrong, but he's put Jimmy G in those positions to have to force a play because the defense is ready for the deep shot, and he's going to take it anyway.
Yeah. My issues with him. I've seen him in key situations such as postseason games. His decision-making process suffers, just like it did at the end of that NFC Championship game.
I feel the same about Jameis Winston, honestly. A lot of people look at that Tampa game because he got hurt that first couple of drives where he ran around and he made a beautiful pass for a touchdown against the Bucs. As he's turned the corner. He's starting to get comfortable in the offense, and Sean Payton's starting to trust him more. But then you go back just 6 days earlier to that Seattle game where he's going toe-to-toe, not with Russell Wilson, with Geno friggin' Smith. They don't convert a third down for a first down until 2 minutes left in the first half. It's a 10-10 tie into 2 minutes left in the second half. And even Drew Brees, I wasn't listening to the broadcast. I was listening to the Peyton and Peyton thing. Eli and Peyton Manning, I should say. Drew's on there talking. He says, okay. He says, what you going to call here? And Drew says, okay, look, we got a one-on-one matchup on the outside, and it's when they try and run that screen pass. And Drew goes, oh, man, what are we doing? And you can see the frustration in it. And that's just 6 days earlier. So it wasn't this magical change in 6 days. Now, that being said, clearly Jameis was playing much, much better in the Dome. This is a game he had circled on his calendar from the time he became a Saint. He's much more focused in that game than he was a Seattle game. So is it a fair comparison? I don't know. But, it's like what Bruce Arians said about Jameis. There's a lot of good, but then there's just so much bad. And you got to figure out how to manage that with him. So, it's funny when people, ripping Garoppolo, I'm like, Jameis kind of falls in a lot of those same categories. He just has more natural talent than Garoppolo does.
Yeah.
Well, and that's why I said, Garoppolo, Jameis, Derek Carr. You could even put Matthew Stafford and a couple other guys in there. Yeah, that's why I said they are all clumped in the same group where you just pick close your eyes and pick the name out of a hat. And it's 6 away. It's tomato. I got Jimmy Garoppolo. I got Jameis Winston. This is what I can do. This is what I can't do. All those guys are the same in my opinion. And Matt Stafford just won a Super Bowl, and I've been a big fan of Matt Stafford throughout his career. But there are just as many detractors of Matthew Stafford's ability. Just like you get to, and the three of us have seen it for now a year and a half about Jameis Winston. Oh, this is why the Jameis Winston is going to be a great fit for the Saints. No, this is why Jameis Winston is going to suck with the Saints. You would get the same exact thing with Jimmy Garoppolo. You would get the same exact thing if the Saints traded for Derek Carr. And Mitchell Trubisky, we haven't even mentioned yet. A couple notches below those guys, but it's the same kind of mentality that we're talking about with Stafford, Winston, Garoppolo, Carr. It's where I don't want to call it average quarterbacking because these guys you can win with, but you have to tailor your system. They are not elite quarterbacks. This is where we are with the New Orleans Saints organization right now.
Has Trubisky even played since leaving Chicago?
He was
he was the backup in Buffalo last year. I think he took a couple mop-up snaps, but that's it.
Yeah. Trubisky was another guy that people look at and go, he was too talented to play as badly as he did in Chicago, and then you look at the other quarterbacks who played under Matt Nagy as a head coach, not as an offensive coordinator, as a head coach, and you're going, he never developed any of those guys either. You
Right.
know, that's why.
Well, see, I disagree on that. I completely disagree that Trubisky was that talented. You traded up one spot.
Yeah, you did.
To draft a guy that had started 13 games in college,
Something like that.
Yeah,
I mean a high first round.
No,
pick.
second overall pick, and he played at North Carolina, which if it was basketball, well worth the pick. But we're talking football. This is not basketball, you know.
Now North Carolina has resurged since Mac Brown went back there, but this was not then.
Yeah, no. And it's funny because the 49ers trolled the Bears for making that trade because they took Solomon Thomas, who was a draft pick I liked a lot coming out, and Solomon Thomas ended up not being a very good player either, not worth the third overall pick. So it was actually kind of funny. They trolled him about that, and it looks like both picks didn't pan out very well. No, when it comes to Trubisky, if we had Sean Payton still, I probably wouldn't be as repulsed by the idea of Trubisky, but
it's a good word.
Yeah, without a Sean Payton type of head coach, I wouldn't want Trubisky around because.
Now, see, what you just said is the exact same way that I feel about Garoppolo. The repulsed part,
Garoppolo's
Payton.
got a better resume than Trubisky.
Yeah, he does.
So he's proven a lot more than Trubisky has. Trubisky hasn't won anything. So and like you said, he only started 12 games in college. So you really have got a raw player that you don't know what you're going to get. This is the problem. This is a Trey Lance really issue. Except Trubisky's not nearly as athletic as Lance, but that's basically what you got with him. You got a raw player that you need to form into something. And Nagy, had no idea what the hell he was doing. And that's why I think Trubisky, for all his crap, he would play like garbage for 9 quarters, for 3 quarters, say 9, 3 quarters. And then that fourth quarter, it's like all of a sudden the light comes on. He's hitting everything. And he's making good decisions, and he's doing stuff, and he's putting points on the board. You're like, what's with the bullshit points? Why are you giving up points at garbage time? But it wasn't just garbage points. He was actually making some pretty good throws. And this happened not once. This happened several times. So to me, it tells you he's got some talent, but I think he's Sam Darnold, essentially. Or where you're going with the kid from BYU they got there now, the latest victim, Zach Wilson. This is where Zach Wilson's headed. Zach Wilson's heading down the cragged rocks that get a Trubisky and get a Sam Darnold. Just, go through the list of quarterbacks, they've gone to the Jets. It's just, that's
the quarterback wasteland.
Yeah, this is what happens, boys and girls. This is what happens when you don't have an elite quarterback. What you start looking at. That's why the Saints' history prior to 2006, Jim Everett aside, because he's a friend of the show, but you go through the wasteland of Saints quarterback just from 1980. Archie at the end of his career. You got Archie. Then you go to Ken Stabler, Dave Wilson, Richard Todd. You just go down that list, and then it's highlighted in the 90s with the Billy Joes and the Kerry Rum Collins and the it's a mess. So this is what happens. We're sitting here trying to find a Drew Brees, and what's the Meatloaf line? You're searching for a ruby in a pile of rocks. From 2 out of 3.
There ain't no Coupe de Ville in a Cracker Jack box.
Yeah, that's what we're doing right now. That's what we're doing right now. Go ahead.
It's funny because you look at several NFL franchises, and you can look at who's the best quarterback in Dallas Cowboys history, and you strike up a debate between. I agree. But you strike up a heated debate between two Hall of Famers, Staubach and Aikman, and then right after that, you're talking, Tony Romo, who did pretty damn good.
Yes.
Danny White, also pretty damn good. Or Dak Prescott, who's forging a pretty good career. You go to the Pittsburgh Steelers, you're talking about who's the best quarterback in Steelers franchise history, Bradshaw. But you strike up a heated debate between Bradshaw and Roethlisberger, and then you have some guys that did pretty damn good. As far as being game managers, Mark Malone, Neil O'Donnell, who I was a big fan of, and you could go through franchise after franchise and have a similar quarterback makeup. Who's the best quarterback in New Orleans Saints history? Hands down, it's Drew Brees. That's fine and dandy. Who's the second best? And you get the debate between Archie Manning, Bobby Hebert, Aaron Brooks, Jim Everett. All guys that I like, but those are your second best options in franchise history.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would say Aaron Brooks wins statistically. He wins because he was in a much better offense with a much better coaching staff. Mm-hmm. The people who say Bobby Hebert, I'm sorry. I'm with Ralph Marlboro on this. Bobby Hebert was not a good quarterback. Bobby Hebert was a very frustrating quarterback. Mm-hmm. He was a local
Imagine what he could have done if he would have stayed sober.
Well, Hebert, we're talking about boneheaded mistakes. Hebert was guaranteed to make them, especially in the playoffs. I put a lot of that loss, those 3 of the 4 losses on Bobby friggin' Hebert, in the playoff games, especially that Eagles game, because that happened right in front of me, and I'm not going to relive that thing, but yeah, you can blame Carl Smith all you want, you can blame the lack of weapons, but he would just make stupid decisions at critical times. That's why he got benched in 89. People forget about that. Yep. He got benched in. You watch that Rams game and Flipper Anderson went off. That was the beginning. And then the following week was the meltdown versus Detroit. And it from that point on, it's like, holy crap, what the hell do we have here as a quarterback? Are you blind? You want to tell Bobby in the locker room, we're wearing black Sunday, Bobby. Throw to the guys in black. It's just so yeah. Archie's always a sentimental favorite of mine, so I'm always going to defend Archie. But
and I get it, but in my opinion, he wasn't a good quarterback.
I was at that game. Yes, I was.
Yeah, and Aaron Brooks was talented as they come, but frustrating as they come.
Oh, yes.
Sean and I have had this conversation more than once. You put Jim Everett on a couple of those in their prime Dome Patrol teams, I think the Saints would have had a couple of Lombardis in their case already.
Absolutely.
But you can't sit here and say that Jim Everett, unequivocally, that Jim Everett was the second best quarterback in Saints history because of how poorly the team did. Jim played really well his first 2 years here, and then he went from here to here very, very quickly. So you can't say unequivocally that Jim Everett was the second best quarterback in Saints history without making an argument for Archie Manning. Well, Archie played really somewhat well for all those piss poor teams. How are you going to forgive Everett then for doing it in only 3 years while Archie did it in 12? And all legitimate arguments. But again, it makes me laugh that this is who our debate is for the second best quarterback in Saints franchise history. That's how hard times this franchise has always been pre-Drew Brees.
Yeah, I would put Aaron Brooks second personally.
Well, he is second. He is second. But and
all the piss and vinegar and hatred that people have for him absolutely pisses me off.
Well, what's the reason? I honestly think it's twofold. I can see the one reason you're talking about, and the venom towards him is that reason. But I will say this. Aaron Brooks in 2000 had the city in the palm of his hand.
He did.
And he had set the expectation bar so high that when he failed to even meet the 2000 level Aaron Brooks, and you're looking at, and people feel that this team is the most talented team that the Saints have put together, and you're not overcoming that, you beat the because to me the 2002 season was the turning point with the injured shoulder and everything.
I agree.
You beat the eventual Super Bowl champion twice, and you still couldn't make the playoffs. I think that also turned people not just against Aaron Brooks, but against Jim Haslett. And I think that's those two things. The thing you're talking about, it's right there. But I think the people feeling like this team is woefully underachieving. You're wasting Deuce McAllister's best years. You're wasting the Joe Horn. You can light up the Giants one week, and the next week you can't complete a single pass against the Jacksonville Jaguars until the final play of the game, and then you pull off this miracle. I think those two things really play into, and then it highlights the backwards pass. I mean, that becomes what's unforgivable to people. So I totally agree. I think Aaron Brooks is the second best. Unequivocally, he's got the statistics, he's got everything going for him. Archie, but
I would put Everett very close behind him.
Everett's unfortunate thing, and that's what I was getting ready to talk about before we went to this. Look at here we go. Danny Werfel. I was not at the game where his helmet got spun around, but But yeah, that actually was I think that was his first start too. Danny's first start as a Saints quarterback was the Carolina game where he got his helmet spun around on that tackle. But
that broke him. I've heard people say he is absolutely the dumbest human alive.
Poor Danny Werfel was definitely.
No, I'm sorry, not Danny Werfel. That was Heath Schuler that I was talking.
Oh, Heath Schuler was just that was a college quarterback being thrust into the pros, and a classic example of a college quarterback who just does not make it in the pros. He really
I feel the same way about Werfel.
Pretty much.
Well, yeah, Werfel, except Werfel didn't have the talent that Heath Schuler had. Heath Schuler had talent actually, but it was talent that was good in the college level, not the pro level. Werfel just lacked the physical ability to play quarterback. I mean, he couldn't even throw. He shot putted the ball. He didn't throw a spiral. He threw, he didn't. I mean, that's God honest truth. He had no RPMs on that ball. He did not throw a spiral. It more or less floated out there. But, just like when Peyton Manning was with Tennessee, you had all those first-round draft picks, wide receivers that came out because of Peyton Manning. Danny Werfel won a Heisman and got a lot of stuff because he had a lot of talent around him. And he had a coach that ran a system that worked really well at the collegiate level, the old ball coach. So now I was getting ready to say, John had posted this on Twitter. Where does Jeremy Shockey fit among tight ends? And I'm bringing this up because we saw Mike Gesicki, big shocker, given the franchise tag. So it took the best tight end available in free agency off the board. Who do you think is the best tight end in Saints history, or who would be your top three, I guess? Bob, you go first, and Sean, you know who I'm going to put, but y'all two go. Bob, you go first.
To me, in this order, I go Jimmy Graham, Henry Childs, and wow. I would say Ben Watson slightly over Jeremy Shockey because Ben did it for a few more years than Shockey did in New Orleans.
Yeah.
But there's some good ones. I mean, Cam Cleveland, Wesley Walls, Irv Smith, they all had their moments. But I think, I'd go Jimmy Graham and
Henry Childs.
And Henry Childs, heads and shoulders. And then I think I'd go with Ben Watson, number 3.
Okay. Who would you do your top three, Sean?
I'm going to shock you. But, number 1 is Jimmy Graham.
Uh-huh. I mean,
that tasted like vinegar in my mouth.
You can't argue that, though. I mean, the guy's setting records for
yeah. He like you said a while ago about the quarterbacks. He had the statistics. And Henry Childs, I agreed with as well. I don't think that you had enough production out of Shockey to put him number 3 because he was only a part-time player. In my eyes, anyway.
Yeah.
So I agree as well with Ben Watson. Ben Watson was a really good tight end for us.
I put the list together for, and I had a hard time getting 10. I'll be honest with you. I put a list for John on his thread on Twitter, but my top 3 were, Graham, Childs. I threw Hobie Brenner at number 3 because Hobie.
I forgot all about him. Yeah.
Yeah. Hobie played.
I would have. Okay, I'll amend mine. Hobie Brenner is tied for 3rd.
Yeah, he played 12 years for the Saints. He was a solid run blocker. He could catch. He wasn't going to beat you. He wasn't a receiver. You're not going to line him up outside the numbers. You're going to use him as a 3rd tackle, and he is just going to. He's going to be a jump ball, maybe a jump ball guy in the end zone, and a guy to throw for a first down. But, Hobie played 12 solid years for the Saints. So I have him, and he's a Saints Hall of Famer. So I got him at number 3. Yeah. But, I mean.
True traditional tight end.
Yes. I've got Ben Watson ahead of Jeremy Shockey because, again, like you said, Watson came back. Watson was actually pretty productive. Shockey was just unavailable. But the games he played, you remember those games. Yeah. You think about, the Giants game, of course, where, he catches the first touchdown to start Drew Brees' streak to eventually break Johnny Unitas' record. But the Miami game where he's just stiff-arming that dude all the way down the field after that one big reception. The Cardinals game where in the playoffs where he's hobbling on one leg and catches a touchdown pass, but that also and of course the Super Bowl, he gets the essentially the go-ahead touchdown in the Super Bowl. I will not tolerate Kobe Fleener disrespect. Somebody told me that I did a good thing about even putting Jared Cook on the list. No, Jared Cook will never appear on any list I have for the Saints tight ends because I just simply will never forgive him for that fumble. Because
was this just a list of New Orleans tight ends, or was this a list of top tight ends?
To me, it's a list of top 10, but that's just it. Once I get past 8, now I'm really kind of scrambling. Who's going to be my final guys? Because I had, if I remember my list right, I had Graham, Childs, Brenner, Walls, Dave Parks, who is number 5. Now you have to go back in time for Dave Parks, but he was probably the first legitimate player that they brought in from another team to the Saints in '68, and he played the first few years of Archie's career. I think he retired in '74. He's a Pro Bowler with the 49ers. But then I go Watson, Shockey. Now I'm starting to run out of names. I put John Tice in next.
That's a good one
because
too.
John Tice, John Tice is right there with Hobie Brenner. But then I'm going, okay, so Irv Smith, Cam Cleveland. Where do I go after that? I'm not going. I really don't think much of Larry Hardy, and that's a name for the 1980 Saints. That he was a run tight end who lost his job quickly to Hobie Brenner in '81, a run blocking tight end. But Paul Seals, who was somebody that we had, it was an up and coming star, and we traded him away in the early '70s. I mean, that's the tight end. We're going now into John Farquhar territory, and that was a legitimate tight end we had. Some giant of a guy that the Saints fans were cheering because he actually caught a pass. But I mean, you're running out of names. Ernie Conwell. Ernie Conwell was hurt all the time. Billy Miller, who had a great season with us in 2006. The founder of Wendy's, Dave Thomas, from the 2009 team. But I mean, Kobe Fleener. What's the guy that we had? I'm trying to remember who. Kobe Fleener. He was a guy that he would catch one or two passes and just disappear. Or Boo Williams. That's another one. Boo Williams is an oversized receiver, but Boo Williams is another one. No, we had that guy that came over from the Packers with the Aaron Brooks trade. He was Aaron's closest friend on the team. He was number 81. I can't remember his name now. But I mean that's the kind of guy. Yeah, you start thinking about, okay, who was the Saints tight end in '96? And you're going, okay, I really don't remember who. I think Irv Smith was still there, that kind of thing. But that's what made me think of it when we talk about Jim Everett. It's funny, 95 Jim Everett is almost like 79 Saints, 79 Archie Manning. He was starting to look like he was coming of age, and if you just made a couple of moves, then we might have made a step back into the playoffs. But then, as Jim Everett said, you got rid of all my boys. Quinn Early gone. Wesley Wall's gone. You're keeping Torrance small, and then you have Michael Haynes, who's only good for a couple passes a game. But, and then you pass up Eddie George and that whole mess.
Jim's defense got old. It was old when he got here.
That's it. Lamont Hall. That was the guy. That was Jim. Yeah. That was the guy.
The offensive line got old. They brought, and like I said, Sean and I have had several conversations about this. They brought Jim Everett in 5 years too late.
Yeah.
Otherwise, New Orleans would be, I'm convinced that they would have been able to get past the 49ers and Joe Gibbs Redskins and Bill Parcells Giants and at least won maybe 2 Super Bowls in the Dome Patrol era.
That's a good what if question. What if the Saints would have made the trade in 1990, traded Bobby Hebert to the Los Angeles Rams because he wanted to go to California, and there was a deal for the Raiders. I don't know if you guys know this or not. There was a deal for the Raiders. Bobby Hebert going to the Raiders for a draft pick and Marcus Allen because Al Davis was pissed at Marcus Allen and wanted to get rid of his ass. And that would have been an interesting what if. So 1989 was the NFC Championship game with the Phantom Sack with Jim Everett. In 1990, the team was kind of falling apart. The Saints, of course, beat them in 1990 to go on to the playoffs that year. But had they made that trade that year, I wonder what the 91 and 92 Saints would have been like with Jim Everett instead of Bobby Hebert at the helm. That'd be an interesting what if, because that was 1990. Unfortunately, was peak Dome Patrol. 91, of course, Pat Swilling sets the record. Wins it Defensive Player of the Year. for having 17 sacks. In 92, that was probably their most productive year. But clearly that team was starting to age. So, you saw the 93 fall off was not surprising. But instead of getting Wade Wilson in, that would have been interesting. Free agency starts in a week. I think a week from today. Yeah, a week from today. My theory has always been the Saints always manage to find somebody they sign in free agency because at one point he kicked their ass, either offensively or defensively. They bring a guy in. Who in the free agent market, and I know I'm putting you guys on the spot, who in the free agent market do you think would you like to see him sign, or that you think the Saints would sign because he kicked their ass at one point?
That's a pretty long list.
Yeah.
Well, it won't be Calvin Ridley.
No, it won't be Calvin Ridley. We're going to bring up Calvin Ridley in a minute because that was the whole theme of this, the topic of this show. You better, you bet.
What is with those Alabama receivers, man? Anyway, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Bob.
Go ahead, Bob.
I'm not going to say kick the Saints' ass, but definitely was a thorn in their side. O.J. Howard at tight end. A move I could very much see, and a move I could get behind. But another Alabama guy. So I don't know if we want to bet on that. See what I did there?
Yeah, I see that.
Dad joke.
No, that's all right. That's the best kind of jokes. I'll be honest with you. How about you, Sean? Is there somebody you're thinking of? Maybe it's a free agent that has kicked the Saints' ass and could be a good free agent to sign. I've got a name, and
I can't really think of anybody right off the top of my head.
Okay, I'm going to throw out P.J. Williams' favorite receiver. I'm going to throw out Godwin, Chris Godwin. He kicked the Saints' ass last year. He had like over 100 and something yards receiving in that first game in the Dome. Now we took his legs out like a loan shark the following in the rematch. But he was playing under a franchise tag. So I could see the Saints trying, seeing how he feels and trying to get this guy because he's coming off of a torn ACL. I think he had last year. He was just short of 100 catches. I wonder how that happened. He had over 1,000 yards receiving and 5 touchdowns. So, I mean, that's who I was thinking of when I came up with that question. Yeah, Ridley would be a gamble.
I wanted the Saints to draft Godwin back in 2017.
Yeah.
The Buccaneers franchise tagged him today, by the way.
Did they franchise tag him?
Yes, they did.
He was playing in the tag last year.
Yeah, they tagged him for the second straight year. Okay. And I would love to see Godwin in a Saints uniform. Like I said, I wanted it back in 2017. I still don't believe that the Saints are going to go for a big-name wide receiver in free agency. If they're going to make a splash move, it's going to be a tight end where you could get a star player at a mid-tier receiver price. You could bring in a big-name tight end. Now, there's 2 or 3 tight ends that have been franchise tagged today.
Njoku is one of them.
Njoku, Gesicki, and Schultz from Dallas. But there's still a handful of really good ones out there. That's where I see the Saints making some noise, is at tight end. I think they saved their best shots for wide receiver in the draft. And goddamn, I hope I'm right this year.
I saw the Combine Warriors, and I keep pushing the draft talk off until after the first wave of free agency because I really don't like to talk about the draft. Somebody asked me if I did a mock yet. I'm like, I don't want to do a mock until I know we've got some stuff filled in because right now, my first round pick, based on if the Saints had to play, they didn't sign any free agents, and they don't have they lose a couple of guys. I'm looking at quarterback, offensive tackle, and safety now
Absolutely.
as needs, not just wide receiver. And I'm thinking, that kid from Georgia who did, who ran an incredible the defensive tackle ran an incredible 40 time and was leaping like a gymnast. That's Jordan Davis, I think his name is. That's that. I'm thinking I'd love to get him at 18. If he's available at 18, I'm hard pressed to pass him up.
Oh, yeah.
But we have all these needs. So, let's kind of see what happens after. I don't think the Saints are active right out of the gate, and I'm worried because they didn't use the franchise tag on Marcus Williams. I'm worried that they're probably going to lose both Williams and Armstead. And you're talking about a guy with Williams. If you lose him, Chauncey Gardner-Johnson and Tyrann Mathieu are having a fun time on Twitter right now, posting a picture of the Honey Badger in a Saints uniform, and talking about you're on fire, and he's at fire and he kind of wants to come back home kind of thing. To me, you're picking up an older player, a smaller player with, on the downside of his career, replacing a guy who is getting progressively better, but, can you afford him? I mean, how do you feel about that, Bob?
And I was asked about this earlier on the Jordy Haltberg show. Mathieu is a hell of a player. He's a hell of a playmaker. He's a different type of player than what Marcus Williams is, though. In Tyrann Mathieu, you are basically getting the same type of player that Dennis Allen has in Chauncey Gardner-Johnson. Now, we know Dennis Allen knows how to use that type of player, so I'm convinced that Mathieu would be a playmaker in the Saints defense, but you're still missing a deep support safety with outstanding range if you sign Mathieu over Marcus Williams. And that's what basically you're talking about, because you can't afford both. Mathieu would come at approximately the same kind of price as Marcus Williams. Now, you could bring in, because I still expect this team to release Malcolm Jenkins, by the way. So Mathieu, a player like Mathieu would fill a legitimate need, but it would not be the need that Marcus Williams fills. You could re-sign P.J. Williams to fill that hole. I think P.J. Williams is best in off-the-ball coverage. It doesn't make me cringe as much. But if you lose Marcus Williams and you don't go get a guy like, excuse me, I have notes flying all over the place. If you don't go get a legitimate free safety like a Tashawn Gibson or a Quandre Diggs or Marcus May from the Jets, who would all of whom, by the way, would cost pretty close to what Marcus Williams would cost. Then all of a sudden, you're talking about needing a legitimate deep safety in the draft. And I don't want to throw out too many names that I've looked up, but there are a couple names out there. But like you said, with you, and I'm not doing any mocks for the same reason yet, Alan. The New Orleans Saints draft strategy will be determined 100% by what happens in the first week of free agency. So Mathieu, I think, would be a playmaker in the Saints defense, but he would, if you lose Marcus Williams and sign Tyrann Mathieu, you are still not addressing the need that you would need to have to fill in losing Marcus Williams as a deep support safety.
Sean, so my question for you then is, do the Saints, if you're the Saints, do you kind of pass on paying big contracts from Marcus Williams to a Terron Armstead and kind of use that money to go a little bargain shopping to get more numbers than players? I mean, how do you see this?
I wouldn't. If it was me, I certainly wouldn't. I think the biggest priority that the Saints have right now is signing Marcus Williams.
Yeah.
Because what do you have on the roster if he's not here?
Yeah, you're looking at a guy like, again, P.J. Williams. You're looking at it's tough because then you're looking at a draft pick.
And
yeah, so
then again, if you go that route, how well is a rookie going to play in this system?
Well,
that's a roll of the dice.
Right. I mean, you're hoping your scouting finds another
Marcus Williams.
another Marcus Williams.
Yeah.
I was just going to say another Paulson Adebo, another guy that you can plug in right away and start. What do you guys think of Jordan Whitehead?
Oh, I love him. And the names that I just spit out, I was remiss in mentioning Whitehead. Next to Marcus Williams, he's my favorite available free agent safety. I don't think Whitehead would come as expensive as Marcus Williams.
Mm-hmm.
He's about the same age. He knows the NFC South well. He knows the Saints well. I would love to bring in Jordan Whitehead.
Yeah, because I don't know if you can get him for $10 million a year or $12 million a year. I think Marcus Williams is trying to set the market as the highest paid safety in the NFL, and he's looking at paying, he's looking at $20 million a year. I think 18 to 20 million a year he's looking to try and get. And I just can't see doing that. But if he gets 18 to 20 million a year, if he sets the market that high, then where does a Whitehead fall? Is he going to be looking for 15 million? Can you get him for 12 million? I mean, that's my concern when you get to those. Once you set that market that high, just like we started the show with Garoppolo now, because this is the compensation that they got for Russell Wilson, how does that domino effect go in? Because, Terron Mathieu, you could probably get him for $8 million, $7 million. I think at his point in his career, he's talking about more or less coming home and playing for his hometown team. But you're right, he's not that hard-hitting safety. He's basically Chauncey Gardner-Johnson. He is that nickel linebacker safety hybrid. Whereas we talked about Armstead before, Armstead I'm more than willing to let walk because I think you can flip and put Ramczyk on the left side and either do Hurst until they think Young is ready, and then you're putting Young next to Ruiz. I think that's ultimately their plan.
I agree.
On the offensive line. So, and the reason why I asked that question to you, Sean, about bargain hunting, I think that's where they're going to go with the wide receiver position. This kind of dovetails.
Well, they call it that for a reason. When you bargain shop, you get what you pay for.
Well, but I think they're looking for an older receiver who may have a little bit of speed left, kind of a Ted Ginn, Emmanuel Sanders kind of guy they can get for a 1 or 2 year rental, because I think they're going to go in the draft and come away with maybe 2 receivers, just depending on how this all falls. That's why I think the quarterback decision is really going to dictate this draft, because if they cannot re-sign Winston and if Garoppolo's price is too high and you're going with a Teddy Bridgewater, you're going to Mitch Trubisky, then now, to me, a quarterback in the first round is a very real possibility and probability, because those guys are not answers,
Stopgap measures at best.
Well, yeah, they're a guy who's going to end up getting replaced at some point during the season. That's how I see those guys. All right, last thing, we kind of joked about it a little bit, but this is just something I saw on Twitter, and I felt like I needed to comment on this. Calvin Ridley got suspended indefinitely for gambling, and people were making good jokes, and this report was brought to you by DraftKings, and we are all Caesars. But this is not the first time that players have gotten suspended for gambling.
Alex Karras
and Paul Hornung, both in 63. And then the infamous Art Schlichter, I cannot say his name. Ohio State. Thank you. Schlichter. I was saying Schlichter. So, that's where I was going, like he was a can of beer. Yeah, that's probably, it's funny because we're talking about quarterbacks going in the draft. He was number 4 overall pick in 82. And of course,
I can't speak to the other 4 examples, but the allegations on Ridley is that he was betting on Falcons games.
To lose, right?
I have no idea. But
he
if
was
that
already,
be the case, he should
already,
never be allowed to wear another uniform.
Well, he was already. I mean, you're already making a dumb mistake by gambling on your team. You might as well pick him to lose since you're not playing. But yeah, I know, Calvin. I'm not saying that's what they're going to go with. I'm saying they would sign these guys a rental with the idea you're drafting a receiver, but you're not putting them out there on day one. That's just how they are. They do not want to go into the draft with glaring holes that have to be filled. They want to have a warm body. I mean, they had Tootie Robbins when they drafted William Rofe. Tootie Robbins lasted training camp before he was gone. So, just because they sign an aging receiver doesn't mean that they won't draft a receiver. It's just this is a guy they're going to bring in just in case the guys they like are not available. And this is fortunately is a deep draft. You can still get a quality receiver in the 3rd round. It's not the flashy names. It's not a Burks. It's not a Williams. It's not Olive or any of those guys everybody likes. But you could probably get a good receiver in the 3rd round. Yeah. So y'all's thoughts on Ridley and the apparent contradiction of DraftKings and legalized sports betting, but the player can't bet on his team. How do y'all feel about that? Either one of y'all. Sean, go ahead.
I think the NFL is what's the word I'm looking for?
People are screaming hypocrites at you right now.
Yeah, it's so hypocritical. You don't allow betting in the league. You can't bet on games, and then you move a team to Las Vegas. What Ridley got busted for was inevitable. Because as you alluded to, you got a major sponsor in DraftKings. You got Caesars Sportsbook. This was something that was inevitable, in my opinion.
Bob, what's your take?
I mean, sure. The word hypocritical is thrown around a lot and accurately in this case, but you're also talking about a league, a business that's being run by Pearl Harbor conspirator Roger Goodell. And I do think it's ridiculous. But at the same time, players like Calvin, NFL players and NFL coaches and NFL executives, I'm assuming NFL executives are held to the same standard. They better be. They do have insider information on what's going on within their league. So if Calvin Ridley did indeed bet on NFL games, especially Atlanta Falcon games, and that's the story, then the suspension, was right. And just based off of it's one of the few very clear rules and guidelines that have been in the NFL for decades and decades. And whether you agree with it or not, just like the marijuana policy, whether you agree with it or not, it's very clear cut.
It's still the rules, whether you like it or not.
Exactly. And there's no gray area within this particular rule. And what Sean just said a minute ago, if Calvin Ridley bet to, I'm not going to say throw games, but manipulated his bets based off of his insider knowledge, then he should not only never be allowed to step foot in an NFL venue again, he should be brought up on charges as such.
Well, I mean, if he bet on Falcons games, as you said, as we have said, is the story, he has a huge chance to affect the outcome of that.
Absolutely.
That's just like
and that's
Pete Rose betting on Reds games.
Yep.
I was,
Being the
gonna bring up-
manager.
I was getting ready to bring up Pete Rose. Yeah, it's the reason why they're not allowed to do it, despite all the publicity and despite all the sponsorships and even fantasy football stuff. You can't do it because you have the ability to manipulate the outcome of the game by
Exactly.
your own play. Okay. And you have inside information about injuries that other players don't get, other people don't get. You know, it's like insider trading. That's essentially what it is.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
that's why you can't allow it. And does it look hypocritical? Yeah, because gambling's becoming legal everywhere. You know, it's like Jimmy the Greek used to be on, and Jimmy the Greek would say, you know, gambling's illegal. You know, bookmaking's illegal, but you know, Jimmy the Greek would do his things. That I would take Dallas plus the points. What
Yeah.
Dallas point? What does that mean? Well, you know, I mean, it's gambling. He's promoting gambling in the 70s on NFL Today. So yeah, so that's basically it, and that's why he gets punished, and people can bitch about, you know, how the league reacts to domestic abuse and drugs and gambling differently. But the reality is, because of the CBA, the punishments for those rule violations are laid out specifically, and the players agree to them. If you do drugs, you get tested, and these are the punishments. These are the suspensions that you get. You know this. Gambling, indefinite suspension. If you get caught gambling, you know, spousal abuse is not in there. They kind of leave that up to the commissioner. So if you want consistency, players, you've got the power. Next CBA, bring it in there. Don't just give it to, you know, the guy who sank the USS Maine in the Spanish-American War. You don't bring Roger Goodell into it. I'm gonna pull them all out. You know.
Oh, good. Because, you know, I'm about to unleash them.
Yeah, here we go. You know, you don't give that power to him. You put the rules in so all the players know these are the consequences, and then you get that consistency of people looking for. So, all right, guys, free agency starts a week from today. We get to knock all this stuff out again. Like I said, I will be surprised if the Saints have anything right out the box. I'm hoping to see them get under the cap. They have to be under the cap by the 14th. So we should see some more moves. This is when things get hot and heavy, though. You're going to see a lot of deals get announced this weekend. We'll see if the Saints sign Jameis Winston this weekend. We'll see if the Saints sign Marcus Williams or what they do. But in the meantime, we'll break it all down for you next week. In the meantime, thanks you all for joining us. We'll see you next time. Good night, everybody.